everybody, this is Eli, and today I'm going to be finishing the trebuchet. I'm going to be making the trigger system and the counterweight. Let's get started. So as you can see, in the last video I finished basically the whole frame and the launching arm and the pouch. And in this video, I'm going to be making the counterweight. So right now, I'm just measuring how tall the counterweight can be. So I have these two strips of oak and then this longer strip that's about 5 inches wide. And I'm measuring the amount of width that I have in between the frames so that this basket wouldn't hit the sides of the frame. So I had about 5.5 inches tall and about 4 inches wide. So I just took this piece of oak, it was about 1/4 inch thick, and I just ran it through the table saw, I think 3.5 inches wide. So now you can see it's that wide, and then just on the chop saw, I cut a piece that was 5.5 inches long. And this piece that I just cut, it was for the base of the basket. So then I took another piece of oak that was a 1/2 inch square block, and I just measured pieces that were gonna be 3.5 inches tall. And these were gonna be the main corners of the whole basket. So I measured it at 3.5, put a stop block on chop saw, and cut as many as I could out of this piece of 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch piece of oak. So I just started cutting 3.5 inch sections. I had about 8 of them. And as you can see, this is where the 4 corner pieces are going to be. They're just going to be sitting right on the corner on top of the base. So I just put a little bit of wood glue on the end of the corner piece and on the base, and then just took a pin nailer and pin nailed through the base and through the bottom corners just to hold it on while the glue dried. And I just did it for all 4 of the corners. And I just lined them up as good as I could. So now you can see all 4 of the corners are nailed and glued in. Then I needed to put little bars across each post so that it would hold the weight that I was going to put in the basket in. So I just took this scrap piece of oak, this strip, measured 3.5 inches on it, and then just cut it on the chop saw. And I put a stop block so I can make them all the same length. And then I just put a little bit of wood glue and just tack nailed them in. And some of them split, so I had to put a new one on, but most of them didn't break. So once I just put the bottom one on, I just took 2 of the scrap pieces and just put it in between the bottom one and the top one just to space them evenly. So now you can see they're all spaced pretty even. And then I wanted to try again, so I used the pin nailer and just pin nailed these in, and they actually didn't crack, so I pin nailed all the rest of the ones. Just so that it would hold it while the glue dried. Now you can see that's that side. And then I just did the same exact thing on the other side. So now you can see both sides, the short sides, are planked in. Then I just went on to the belt sander and I just started sanding the whole basket so that everything would be flush and it would be ready for me to put the long sides of the planks on. So then I took this big piece of oak and I just went on the chop saw and just cut a piece. I just estimated a size of a piece that I needed, and I just cut it. And I was going to use this piece because I went to the table saw and I just cut a little strip off of it so that I can make more banding for the edges of the basket. So this on the table saw, I just measured how thick I needed this strip to be, and then just cut a strip off. And basically these strips on the edges of the box were going to be just containing the material that you'd have in it for the weight. So I just cut 3 bands so I'd have enough, or 3 strips so I'd have enough material to make the other edges of the basket. So now you can see those are my 3 pieces. So then I just needed to measure how long I needed them. And they came out to be exactly 5 inches long. So I just measured 5 inches on one of the bands, went to the chop saw, and just made a stop block and cut as many as I could out of these 3 bands. Now you can see I have a nice big handful. So then I just took those and did the same exact procedure that I did for the short sides and did it just for the long ones. Instead of using spacers for this one, I just eyeballed it and just kind of glued it on. I just did the same for the other side. Now you can see the main part of the basket is finished. So then I just went to the belt sander another final time and just sanded so all the sides were beveled and the whole thing was flush with everything. Now you can see. So now the box is mainly done. And the next thing I needed to do was just to make these 2 basically holding points on this basket. So I took these other 2 pieces that were just scraps from the main support corners on the box, and I just glued them in the middle of the basket on the top rails. So as you can see, they're just going to be located right there. So I just glued them and pin nailed them and then just clamped them to let them dry. And now you can see that's where they're going to be. So then once they dried overnight, I came back and I had to drill 2 holes in each one of them. So I just marked the center of each beam and drilled pre-drilled a hole and then drilled a bigger hole so that this little bearing that I used for the slinging arm, same bearings, would just fit into these holes. And the only reason I used bearings was because I had them and I thought it'd be really cool because it would move really smoothly and wouldn't make any noise. And they're the same exact bearings I used for the main slinging arm. They're just from an RC truck. And now you can see this 3/16" rod fits perfectly into the bearings and spins really nicely. And now you can see the basket is almost finished, it just needs lids. So now you can see the whole basket is finished, and whenever I was about to leave the shop to go to my house, I didn't get it on film, but I put this little support beam, I glued it in. My dad suggested me to put one just so that it'd be stronger. So I just put a little bit of wood glue on a scrap piece and just put it in there. So then I went to the belt sander and did some final sanding onto this box before it went onto the trebuchet. So now you can see this is the rod I used. It's 3/16" rod. It's just some steel rod that you could get at Lowe's or any home center. And I just marked a spot that I needed to drill on the main slinging arm that I thought would be a good pivot point. So I just marked it on the main slinging arm and then just drilled a 3/16" hole through the end of the slinging arm. Now you can see the holes straight through. And then I just needed to measure how long I needed to cut this steel rod. and it ended up being 3.5 inches long. And I just wanted to stick out just a tiny bit out of the sides of the box. So then I just went onto the metal chopping saw, and I just cut this piece. And since the piece was rusty and had some burrs on the end, I just went to the grinder and just used the wire wheel and the grinder to just make it nice and smooth and shiny. So now you can see the rod's shiny and perfect length, and it fits right into the bearings and slings really nicely. It rocks very smoothly. So then I just needed to feed the rod through the slinging arm and through the basket so that it would just hold on and be really tightly onto the slinging arm. So now you can see it rocks and the bearings work really great. And for my weight, I use these 54 caliber musket loader bullets. They're lead, so they're super heavy. And I just filled this basket almost to the top. But no bullets fell through the cracks, so they're perfect size. But they did fall out of the top, as you can see when I let it go. So for my solution, I used this other piece of oak. This was just a scrap. It was about 2.5 inches wide, and I just needed it to be a little bit thinner. So on the planer, I just put it lengthways and just planed about 1/8 of an inch off of it. So then you can see those are the two openings of the main box. So I just set this piece on top of the openings and just marked where I needed to cut it on the chop saw. So I just marked that and then just cut two pieces that are the same exact length. I can see I have the two pieces. And I have these neodymium N52 rare earth magnets that I was going to use to connect the lid to the basket. So I just measured where I needed the magnets to be, and I used 4 magnets for each lid. And there's 2 lids, so I used 8 magnets in total, which sounds like a lot, but it was worth it, and it works really great. So I just marked on the lid where I wanted the hole to be, and then just marked on the side and just met the 2 lines together so that I knew a point for me to drill a hole for the magnets. So as you can see, I'm just meeting the 2 points, and right where they connect or intersect is where I needed to drill the holes. And then I just used this 1/8 inch drill bit and just drilled right where those lines intersected. And then once I had those drilled, I just set the lid right on top of the basket exactly where I wanted it to be. And I had those holes that I just drilled previously on top of the corner posts. So I just lined it up, and then I took the same drill bit and just drilled through the pre-drilled holes into the post to make a marker so I knew where to drill with the Forstner bit to put the magnets. So I just took this 1/2 inch Forstner bit, drilled about 1/4 of an inch into the post, and then just put the magnets in. And then where those pilot holes were, I just put the Forstner bit on those pilot holes and just drilled the same exact depth for the other 2 magnets. And then I just set the magnets in to make sure they all fit in good. Put the magnets on the lid and just made sure they all lined up. And then later I put CA glue in the magnets in the hole to just make sure they hold in. And I did the same thing for the other sides and put CA glue in the holes. And now you can see they just clip right on. And if you watch, when I drop it, it just goes right onto its place. And now when I pull the trebuchet's arm back, none of the bullets come out. So then just those lids, took them to the belt sander and just rounded off the edges to make them look a lot better. So then the next thing I needed to do was just to make a trigger system for the trebuchet. So I took these blocks of wood, this oak, that I used for the corner pieces on the basket because I had some left over. And I just marked where I needed to glue them onto the frame. So once I marked that, I just marked exactly where the end and the top and bottom of the pieces were, and I marked the same exact for the other side. Put some CA glue onto it just to hold it temporarily, and then clamped it. And once I had the same exact mark on the other side, I did the same exact thing. And then clamped it. So then, just to hold it so it'd be a lot stronger, I took these finish nails and I pre-drilled 2 holes on each end and then 2 more holes a little bit inside of the 2 end ones. So I had a total of 4 nails on this block and CA glue holding it onto the frame, which would be plenty strong for this. And then I just did the same thing for the other side. Then I just marked the exact center of these blocks so that I could drill a hole through it so that the 1/4-inch steel rod that I would use for the trigger system would go into it. So I just used this drill bit that was 1/8 of an inch, drilled a hole from the beginning and all the way through to the other side, and then just used this 1/4-inch drill bit to drill through. And now you can see the steel rod fits really nicely. But then I measured and just cut a piece. And I think it was 8 inches long. And then the ends were a little bit rough, so I just went to the grinder and just grinded it and made it nice and smooth. So you can see this is the rod I had. And I wanted a hole to be on the end so that I could put this paracord through it to make a loop that it would hold onto the trebuchet with. So I just took this little drill bit. It was a 3/32 inch drill bit. Put it in a vise and just drilled a hole all the way through each end on the steel rod. And now you can see there the hole is. And then just to make the whole thing nice and smooth and ready for a coat of lacquer, I just took this palm sander and just sanded the whole entire thing smooth and nice. And then also this rod that the trebuchet's arm held onto was a little bit long, so I just used a hacksaw and just cut off the end to make it nice and the same length. And these were actually my ammo. They're steel egg sinkers for fishing. They're 1 gram each, or 1 ounce I meant to say. And just to hold it onto the base so I wouldn't have one just laying around, I took this neodymium magnet and a Forstner bit that was the same size as the neodymium magnet, and just drilled a really thin, shallow hole onto the base of the trebuchet and just set this magnet in with some CA glue so that this steel egg sinker would just hold onto it so that I would have some spare ammo ready to shoot. Now you can see it just sticks right there. And then since this was a big project, I used a big pipe for my E. It was kind of tricky to make a full circle. Then I just put my E. And now the whole thing's ready for a coat of lacquer. I used gloss lacquer. And I did wear a mask for this because this lacquer is really strong and you don't want it in your lungs. And to just finish off the trigger system, I took the rod and I took this 220 paracord and just marked where I needed to hold it onto the frame. So I took this 1/8 inch drill bit and drilled 2 holes for these little U-nails. And then I just put the paracord on the frame and then hit these U-nails in so that it would hold the paracord onto the frame. So now you can see it's nice and tight on there. Then I just needed to tie the paracord into the hole on the steel rod for the trigger system so that you would not lose the rod when you use the trigger system. and then I just cut off the excess rope. So thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you liked this video. This is the final part of the trebuchet. I will be doing a test video, but thank you so much for watching. If you are still watching to the end of this video, I'll see you on the next video.